Speaking on MSNBC, New York Times editorial staff member Margays said that she recently took a trip to Long Island where she was disturbed at all of the American flags flying in the pickup trucks. She said the message was clear. They were telling her it was their country, not hers. Kind of a paranoid delusion. I think people fly the American flag because we live in America. And the story may be stupid. It may be silly. A lot of people are highlighting just how stupid it was. And a lot of people tell me it's meaningless. It's just one person on TV. But this, to me, is indicative of a much larger problem. Right now, you have people who are absolutely at odds with this country, what it stands for, its symbols, what it represents. It's not just about the flag. But when you have the co-host on MSNBC agreeing with this woman at the mainstream highest level, there is a faction of people in this country that are disturbed by the literal flag of this nation. And it's worse than that. It's 1619 indoctrination in schools, the literal rewriting of history. It's street violence. It is children's shows, children's channels running anti-Trump commercials. On the other side, we have something different. The left gives us the desecration of the American flag. The right gives us the admiration and protection of that flag. Recently, in the past week, there was a veteran who had an American flag on his property burned by some extremists, probably a far leftist, somebody who was indoctrinated and hates America. And then we also have the more extreme faction, many Trump supporters and Trump himself, saying that you should go to prison for disrespecting the flags. The hyperpolarization is real, and it is now deep-seated. I think this is more than just a story about some individual on TV. It is a grain of sand in the heap showing us that our country is fractured between those who don't believe in its history, who despise the country, think it's evil, hate its symbols, hate what it stands for. And then there are those that revere this country, respect it and believe in it. And that is a big split defining what the culture war is. A lot of people, as you often hear, I say the culture war is authoritarian versus libertarian or nationalist versus globalist. Yeah, well, it's also wokeness versus the anti-woke, and it's also those who like America, not even hardcore chauvinist nationalist people waving American flags, demanding, some kind of American supremacy. I mean, it's literal people who are like, yeah, America's all right. We've done a great job. That faction opposed to those who say the country is awful and evil and would seek to indoctrinate children with this ideology. Now, again, maybe there's already a lot of people who are like, this is dumb. Who cares about this MSNBC thing? This is the New York Times, the Gray Lady, the paper of record. What do you think is going to happen when 10 years from now, 20 years from now, there are children who are being indoctrinated with revisionist history? What happens when they start getting jobs at these organizations? What happens when they start running for office? What happens when 30 years from now, these people who are leaders of industry are telling you to your face, everybody knows the U.S. was actually founded in 1619 as a slavocracy? What happens when we see the political violence escalate to a point where people are being beaten simply based on their race? And the argument for that was, yeah, well, it happened in the past and it should happen now. I was told this in no uncertain terms by a black woman at Occupy Wall Street when she looked at me and said, it's our turn now. No, that's horrifying. We want to end these things. But let me read through some of these stories and explain to you. At the core, America is fractured, and it's fractured beyond recognition, with one faction revising history and disbelieving in American history, hating its symbols and advocating against it. And these people dominate a major political party. Maybe you think it's silly culture war nonsense, but when you have a president who just recently referred in a budget proposal to women as birthing people, you can see the ideological split is at the highest level. So what happens? I mean, these worldviews don't just compromise. Well, let's get into it. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com and become a member to get access to exclusive members-only segments from the Timcast IRL podcast. But more importantly, you're supporting the work that I do here. You're supporting the expansion of this company. And we've got a newsroom launching soon. We've got some new journalistic prospects who are going to be joining. And the newsroom should be up maybe in like a week or two. That is what your membership gets you. It gets you access to these bonus segments. But more importantly, it funds the work I'm doing. If you think I'm doing a good job, please like this video, share this video because I don't have access to massive marketing budgets and YouTube isn't propping me up the way that they do for CNN. But again, timcast.com, become a member. Take a look at this story from the National Review. New York Times editorial board member disturbed by sight of American flags. Why? Why would anyone be disturbed by that? These are just American flags. But remember, back a few years ago, Nike announced they were going to be doing a shoe with the original flag of the 13 colonies. It was the Circle of Stars. I guess it was Colin Kaepernick and a bunch of activists said it was racist. The American flag itself declared racist and Nike had to apologize. If we as a country cannot even defend our own flag, then what country is there to defend? I think of that image, I believe it was Iwo Jima, when they were raising the American flag. Yeah, now what? That's racist? Yep. No joke. National Review reports. On Tuesday, New York Times editorial board member Mara Gay graced MSNBC's Morning Joe to recount a harrowing trip she took to Long Island this past weekend. In the middle of a broader conversation about the January 6th Capitol riot and the scourge of Trump voters more generally, who she says believe that their rights as citizens are under threat by simple virtue of having a shared democracy with others and see Americanness as whiteness, Gay launched into not so scary story time. Now, I will point out, share democracy. Okay, we got to be firm on this one. America is a constitutional democracy. We have democratic institutions. No one is concerned about sharing democracy. We are concerned about amoral and dogmatic mob rule, however. I certainly am. It's existed before, and they're trying to bring it back. However, she continued, I was on Long Island this weekend and visiting a really dear friend, and I was really disturbed. I saw, dozens and dozens of pickup trucks with expletives against Joe Biden on the back of them, Trump flags. And in some cases, just dozens of American flags, which, is also just disturbing because essentially the message was clear. It was, quote, this is my country. This is not your country. I own this. Right? Says Micah Brzezinski, chiming in after Gay's tale reached its climax. Now, when I first saw the segment, I thought people were exaggerating. Oh, she wasn't disturbed by the American flag. It was the Trump flags and the pickup trucks driving around. It's still a stupid thing to be disturbed by. Oh, no, people disagree with my opinions. And then she said the American flags, which, is also just disturbing because the message was clear. It was my country, not yours, my country. Okay, maybe what she's saying is that the combination of American flags with Trump supporters, but she's saying, it's the American flag itself. Now, again, to be fair, maybe she's just saying when you have the American flags with these people, they're making a statement. But when she comes out with this quote, this is my country, not your country, I own this. That is a paranoid, delusional view of the world. Now, let me explain. These people didn't say that to her. They didn't walk up to her and say, you see that flag? Here's what it means when I'm holding it. No. She gets her worldview from a corrupted and broken media. This is the derangement. We called it Trump derangement syndrome, but it's well beyond that. These people on MSNBC are pushing this stuff. It's well beyond just Trump. Now it's anybody who's going around who supported him and has the American flag. So what does that lead to? I'd like to point out first and foremost, Margay is not, she's been involved in controversies before. Brian Williams and New York Times' Margay dragged for bad on-air math about Bloomberg campaign spending. The New York Times editorial board member says that she's buying a calculator BRB. Why? Well, she said, this is funny, that Michael Bloomberg spent $500 million on his campaign. And if you divided that among 327 million people, you could give each person $1 million. Because apparently she doesn't understand that it would be like, what is it, like $1.70 or something, or $2? No, not even $2. It's like $1.70. Yeah, really, really bad math. Now, a lot of people drag this individual, but you need to understand this is the New York Times, the gray lady, the paper of record, Times Square. It's supposed to be helping us stay informed. And we have a combination of sheer stupidity. Sorry, I'm not trying to be mean, but it's true. And outright paranoid, delusional perceptions of reality. The American flag, this is what they're saying. It's not true. It's just made it up. Well, of course, when she got mocked for her bad math, she said it was racism. This is what we're seeing. And I know, again, maybe it's just silly culture war stuff, but it gets crazier. These people on mainstream TV at the New York Times have a worldview based on fiction. It's akin, in my opinion, to the Q people who believe really, really crazy things, that there's a secret war going on and Trump is the real president, all this other stuff. It's just, listen, whatever you want to say about the election, Biden won. I don't care. I mean, look, I've had Matt Brainerd on the IRL podcast. We've talked a lot about what's happening. We'll see if these investigations come out with anything, but certainly there's a man in the White House and his name is Joe Biden. But these people don't have institutional power. They're not in media. They're not in schools. They're not pushing this. Trump tried the 1776 project. It got removed from the White House the moment Biden stepped in. And now I show you it is institutional at the highest levels, from our media institutions to our embassies in the federal government. From Daily Mail, U.S. embassies in Greece, Spain, Cambodia, and Bosnia fly BLM flags after a leaked State Department memo encouraged promotion of the group on first anniversary of George Floyd's death. I guess, I just kind of feel like part of me says, this is dumb. Who cares, right? And that's why I keep bringing it up. It is important because I'm looking at it like, do all of these stories add up to something? Yeah. I noticed it this morning when I saw that story about the flag. I'm like, you've got veterans, this story, who would rush in and save the American flag, or would find a flag on the ground and they would lift it up and they would try and save it from desecration. You have these stories about the revolution where the American flag had fallen under a British bombardment, but the flag kept being lifted up. And then finally, when people came in to see how the flag kept being raised, kept getting lifted after being knocked over, it was propped back up. It was the dead bodies of the Continental Army, of the Americans who refused to let that flag fall. And they would hold it up and then they would get bombarded and their bodies. That's the stories. Those are the stories we grow up with. Now the stories we hear is that we should fly a flag of a communist ideology that quite literally uses the red salute, the communist salute, alongside, just beneath the American flag, or in some instances flying where the American flag does not, on top of these buildings. I find that horrifying. Black Lives Matter founders are overtly communist. Have we really lost our way that much that we do not have a unifying culture anymore? We don't. So now we have this. We have some people who stand up for the American flag and for the national anthem and believe in this country. Some people who go further and think that we should have the Pledge of Allegiance in schools. I've never been a big fan of the Pledge of Allegiance, but I certainly do respect this country. Why? This is the country that allows me to not say the Pledge of Allegiance. But I know. MSNBC, New York Times. You say, Tim, what else do we have? I'll tell you what freaks me out. First, this is less so, but House Republicans co-sponsor bill to ban any but U.S. flag at American embassies. I agree. Why? Well, they're flying rainbow flags and other flags that they shouldn't be. The American flag symbolizes the country of this consulate, of this embassy, etc. We shouldn't be flying flags of ideology. If they made a flag for Catholicism, I'd say no to that as well, or any other religion. We shouldn't be doing that. This is a country for all people. But think about what it means when the embassies fly the flag of a cult-like ideology, of a dogma. We know half this country does not support Black Lives Matter. Why would embassies then fly this flag knowing half the people here don't like it? I'll tell you, it is because we are in the midst of a cold civil war. Maybe it's gone hot with January 6th. Maybe it's gone hot with all the Antifa and Black Lives Matter extremism and violence and rioting and murders. Maybe we're in a hot conflict. It's just not to the point where we have state against state, but maybe we will get there, and that worries me. At the same time, there's a very real prospect of a conflict with China. Now, I know a lot of people who watch my content, probably not overt and hardcore leftists, and many might have a blind spot to what the left says and does. But I bring this up, and maybe there's oftentimes people don't understand. The left says of the right the exact same thing the right says of the left. In an article from Medium, do Republicans want a civil war? The GOP is unraveling democracy and menacing American peace. Well, we heard what that lady from MSNBC said, that, the Republicans are saying it's my country, it's our country. When the Republicans say of the left that the Democrats are destroying this country, and I firmly believe that is the objective reality here, because you have one group that says, I agree with America and the American flag and America needs to make improvements, but hey, we like this country. Then you have the left saying erase and change the history and don't fly its flag. The flag is racist. Yeah, which side actually likes this country and wants to preserve its institutions? It's not the left who's gone insane. But I'll show you how bad it really gets. I was reading this comic from The Nib. You may have heard of The Nib. It's really, really unhinged stuff. I got to be completely honest. It is just ill-informed and ignorant young leftist talking points. They seem not to know a whole lot about politics. And in one of their comics, it says the return of the sensible liberal. There's a comment. It is the top most liked comment from their post. And it's someone just saying, a friendly reminder that the right wing wants us all to die. 29 likes. Well, that's not true. Republicans don't want leftists to die. As the saying goes, the right thinks that the left thinks the right is evil, but the right just thinks the left is misguided. And that tends to be, I think, true. When you actually get down to it and look through all the news, it's clear that the left lives in this paranoid, delusional state. Here's another example. West Virginia to give away guns as vaccine incentive. And you can see one doctor saying, thanks for coming in. I think of all the lives you're saving. And a guy in a red hat says, don't worry, I'll even it out, as he's handed a lever action rifle. Who actually thinks that? That's insane. Take a look at the CBS reporting, however, on the other side. When several deputies were injured, leftist activists came out and chanted, we hope they die. There are numerous stories that I've been reading. I don't want to pull them up, where Black Lives Matter blocked emergency service vehicles on the highway. How do you contend with a massive tribalist cult-like mentality that doesn't actually seek to get to the truth, but seeks to inflame and enrage and make everything worse? I don't know. They'd say the same thing about me. They'd claim I'm the one lying. They do. They say it all the time. No, I think I have objective truth on my side. The problem is they say they do too. Well, they don't read conservative outlets. They don't talk to conservatives. I do. I also read left-wing outlets. As I noted, I read the Nib. I see what their comments are talking about. It's frustrating going on Reddit and seeing these nonsensical, garbled, propagandistic statements for the establishment that make no sense. The support for Joe Biden, as if he was going to be some great, president for the left, and now he's abandoned the left on most of their causes. Solon writes, the president wants you dead. And so do his friends and advisors. It's that simple. These people live in a paranoid, psychotic, delusional state. Sorry. Maybe it's biased. I think about this from time to time. Am I contributing to the hyperpolarization? Probably. What do I do about it? What am I supposed to do when Antifa and Black Lives Matter go around burning down buildings? Honestly, I have no idea. I can report on it. I can say they're doing it. And then that makes people on the right say, we've got to do something about this. Think about it policy-wise. Finally, now you end up with Donald Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, a small handful of Republicans who have finally started pushing back and saying, we want things. The Republicans for the longest time just opposed things. And for the most part, that's still all they do. When the left is unwilling to compromise, what happens? The left says, we want a complete overhaul of healthcare. Republicans, for the most part, say no. The left says, then you're fascists. Donald Trump comes out and says, we want restrictions on immigration. We want this and we will demand it. And the left says, you're fascists. They won't compromise. They scream. They oppose it. The Republican establishment, for the most part, just gives the Democrats what they want when they make demands. And the Republicans don't demand anything. Of course, as I stated, if you listen to nothing but leftist media, they'll tell you the opposite. But I'm sorry, it's just not true. Over the past 100 years, we have gotten more and more gun control and gun restriction. There is no pro-gun right. There is only a slow the Democrats down and gun movement. Don't get me wrong. There certainly are organizations that are advocating for the repeal of certain gun laws and, abolishing the ATF. But think about this. The left says abolish police and the DHS. Republicans just say slow down. Where are the Republicans coming out and saying abolish the ATF and abolish the NFA, the National Firearms Act? They don't do it. It is disproportionate. It is the left making demands and continually pushing this extremism. Courier Journal says Trump's no angel, but liberals with their ugly threats have become what they claim to hate. This is from 2 years ago. The original header says Democrats wish death and destruction, personal ruin on Republicans. Yeah. In the Pacific Northwest, Jason Rant says, Washington Democrats force critical race theory training, Highline schools leans in. What happens when the youth of our country are indoctrinated by the 1619 Project and hardcore racist ideology? The left is pushing anti-American rhetoric. Now, look, I get it. This country changes. There was a period where the U.S. was very identitarian. I mean, if you look at the statements from the Civil War and what a lot of people were saying about white racial identity, yeah, this country was one way, and the Democrats are reactionary. What does that mean? They want to revert the U.S. back to the way it used to be. Segregation, racial identitarianism. So maybe then it's true. When they say it's the Republicans that don't actually like America, yeah, I guess. They're the ones who want to go back to segregation, so sure. No, they say the Republicans are the ones who, it's the strangest thing. It's the darndest thing. But things are starting to get bad. Again, all of this segment stemming from just this one MSNBC article, but there's a lot more to it. Seth Dillon, you may know him. He's with the CEO of Babylon Bee, tweeted this video. Tell Nickelodeon what you think about this. Tag them, DM them, shame them, bring back shame. In the video, it is a drag performance talking about pride. But the thing that's most alarming to me is the red salute. The red salute. The image being held up. It's the fist used by Black Lives Matter, an overtly Marxist symbol. It is used by the Chinese Communist Party. They raise their fist in the red salute when they're being appointed to a position. It is the symbol of communism. It is now being displayed on Nickelodeon for children. When our kids grow up, and this is the ideology that they have, you understand the point I'm getting to. But talking about the American flag, I think we can break it down rather simply. From the Epoch Times, video shows Marine veteran rescuing fallen American flag on the highway on Memorial Day. These are the two distinct worldviews that are becoming extremely polarized. A man willing to jump out on a highway, maybe not the most dangerous thing in the world because not every highway is rushing traffic, but still rather dangerous. And some people would probably say, hey, that's a really dumb thing to do. Why are you jumping out on a highway? For the American flag, man. Because he is willing to risk his safety for the American flag. Meanwhile, on mainstream television in this country, to one of the largest left-wing audiences, MSNBC says the flag is disturbing. It's disturbing to see that flag. This man does the opposite. In Arizona, veterans' American flag set on fire outside his home before Memorial Day weekend. You see? While one man is willing to jump out into the street in a highway to rescue the flag, others are willing to destroy the flag on someone's house. Someone minding their own business. You're going to burn it down? I wonder where this leads us to. If the next 10 or 20 years, these ideologies embolden. It's been only a few years. And I warned in 2017 and 18, when this cult-like ideology of the culture war reaches the highest levels of culture, of TV, of media, of government, what happens? What happens when you have people tell me, they say, Tim, you're wrong. Look, I know tons of people in the army. They are all MAGA. It's like 95% MAGA, bro. And then I hear from other people who quit because they were like, everyone I knew was woke. And the messaging coming out was woke. That's not indicative of one side winning. When people tell me the military is MAGA, I don't believe the military, top down, everybody is pro-Trump or right wing. It means that these people know there are pockets of pro-Trump, platoons or battalions or whatever. And then when I hear from other people who quit saying everybody was woke, that means there are pockets of wokeness in the military, both ideologies bubbling up and gaining ground. Who's winning? Well, I think when you look culturally, the woke absolutely are winning because the Republicans aren't willing to do anything about it. But it doesn't matter. What happens when it comes to a head? When you have two generals, one who's woke and one who's anti-woke, do you think they're going to trust each other? No. I think about this in terms of religion. I think back to these old stories where I'm like, not even old stories, even now in the Middle East, a Christian will be brought to their knees by a Muslim, and the Muslim will say, renounce your religion or else. And the Christian will say, I refuse, I would rather die. Why? Because they want to go to heaven, because they truly, truly believe in their convictions. And what happens? Religious war. People get killed for this stuff because they say your God is a heathen God, my God is the right God, do it or else. What do you think happens when our country gets to that point? What do you think happens when you have people at the highest levels of the military, of the State Department saying, fly the flag that half the country opposes? That should be the biggest warning sign to all of you. When the American flag is disrespected by one side, and they are putting their flag up to compete with the flag of this country. They hate the American flag and they want the Black Lives Matter flag up at these embassies. So now we have two flags? What does that mean? I think it means things are getting alarming. Trump says he wants to punish flag burning with a year in prison. The exact opposite of the left. It's one thing for someone to save the flag from a street. It's in the middle of the highway. It's another thing for the left to burn it. And it's another thing for the president to say you should go to prison for burning it. Now, I'll tell you what. I believe in free speech. But if I was forced at gunpoint to choose a side, well, as much as I don't like it, I'd choose the side that says don't burn the flag. Why? I don't like flag burning. I like free speech. But the other side opposes all of our norms. It's tough. There's no easy solution. I don't like either of it. Given the reality of the world, the real world, I can say outright, no, you shouldn't go to prison for burning a flag. Trump was wrong, and I reject this. But what? We have one side saying, okay, then burn the flag. I say no to that. So what do I have to choose? I guess protecting the flag, even though I don't want to. I don't want people going to prison for burning the flag, but I certainly won't support the people who advocate for burning everyone's flags or flying the flag of a cult ideology at our embassies. The stuff goes into our schools. They teach our kids about critical race theory in 1619, and then at the NFL, they sing the Black National Anthem, lift every voice and sing, before the Star-Spangled Banner. There are two national anthems being sung at our sporting events. Maybe there shouldn't be any. There are two flags flying at our embassies. The people who support the American flag typically do not like the Black Lives Matter flag, and the Black Lives Matter people don't like the American flag. Why are there competing anthems and competing flags flying in this country? You think I'm wrong? Fine, whatever. Maybe nothing will happen. But I said this a few years ago. The conflict will escalate. It will go from stupid video games and movies into our government, into our presidency, into our contracts, and now it's at our embassies. Okay, fine. Maybe the sporting events are meaningless. Two different national anthems being sung, and half oppose one and half oppose the other. Where do you think that leads to? We do not have a cohesive society or culture. I don't know. Texas wants to yank funds from sporting teams that don't play the national anthem. This is just, I'm not saying I'm in favor of one or the other for the most part. I'm just saying there are two very distinct ideologies. It's almost like Thucydides' trap, which I've talked about in the past. When one economic power is rising and about to displace the dominant economic power, war breaks out. What about an ideology or a moral framework? What happens when the moral framework that makes up this country, the classical liberalism and the Judeo-Christian values, are being supplanted and displaced by woke, fascistic ideology? There is no truth but power. What happens when they say, we won't fly your flag or sing your anthem? When they say it's yours and not ours? When you have 81 million people in this country who despise its symbols? I'm not saying they all do necessarily, but there are millions upon millions who would support those who oppose it. And then we get these stories where they say it's the Republicans who oppose this. Okay, there's a continuity of government in this country, the American flag. That's why I support this country. I've long believed in America and its values because we can see all of the great things it's gotten us. But the paradox of intolerance seems to be true. Yeah, the left likes to put up this comic saying, we cannot tolerate intolerance. It must be rejected. They're right. The right has allowed and tolerated the leftists to keep spreading their dogma and their cult. And now it's on MSNBC and in the New York Times. And now their flag is literally flying beneath ours at the embassy. And they're displaying on children's programming the symbol of communism, the red salute. Whatever. Even people on the right are like, Tim's just fear-mongering. Perhaps. Perhaps I shouldn't say anything. But when I said it was going to escalate, was I wrong? No, apparently I wasn't. That's too bad. I had Ryan Long on. Ryan Long's a great comedian. Love the guy. He's fantastic. Had him on the Timcast IRL podcast, and he kind of ambushed me. It was funny. I thought it was enjoyable. Before the show, before every IRL show, we're sitting up in the studio. We're setting cameras. We're setting lighting, and we're talking. We're warming up. Nothing came up pertaining to conflict, crisis, or civil war. And then as soon as the show starts, Ryan Long says immediately to me, hey, what happened to that civil war you were talking about, Tim? You got me all worked up. I left here. I was freaking out. And I thought it was funny because it felt like an ambush. I'm not saying he was intending to do it. I think Ryan Long's fantastic. But we never talked about it. He never asked me about it. He saved that line of questioning immediately for the start of the show. And my immediate response was, Didn't a bunch of Trump supporters and right-wingers storm into the Capitol during the counting of the Electoral College vote, believing that the election was stolen? Oh, yeah. So when I told people a few years ago that it will escalate to the point of civil war, I said, I don't know what form it will take. It could be propagandistic warfare. It could be fourth and fifth generational warfare. It may not ever get hot conflict. People still said I was crazy, that there was some kind of civil conflict, even when you have a Princeton professor saying it. Then a bunch of people on the right stormed into the Capitol building, shutting down the Electoral College vote for some time. Again, we're desensitized. Could you imagine if, without any of this Trump stuff, a group of people stormed in during like Obama's second inauguration? People would be shocked by it, but we're desensitized. People can't see it. It has been one grain of sand after another to the point where Republicans aren't even shocked or bringing up the sheer insanity that it is that the State Department is telling embassies to fly a non-American flag. I mean, this is insurrection. No joke. Burning the American flag, rioting and burning down buildings is insurrection. They say January 6th is insurrection. I say it's all civil war. Civil war in this country, that as we know it from in the 1860s, was very unique. It was a union of states fighting. It was not typical civil war we see in other countries. Take a look at the Spanish Civil War and get back to me. We are absolutely on track for whatever that was. I'm not kidding, man. Watch the history lessons from the Spanish Civil War. Certain regions started becoming more nationalistic. Certain others started becoming more communistic. We're seeing it. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe after everything I've predicted, many of which I got wrong, of course, and many of which I got right, the things I've predicted that have been correct, the escalation, of course, and the expansion of the ideology now putting their flags in our embassies, maybe it stops here. Maybe all of a sudden these people say, you know what, maybe we shouldn't fly this flag. Maybe the American flag is the flag for me. Do you really believe that's what's going to happen? Or is what really going to happen is that they're like, let's take the American flag down. Think about Brett Weinstein. For the longest time at Evergreen College, they said they were going to have a day of absence where students of color would not show up to show white people what they were missing. One day they said, now it's time for the same protest where the white people have to leave. An inversion. Right now they're saying, we just want to fly our flag at the embassy. How long until they say, look, we're just taking down the flag for the day? How long until they say, we shouldn't have the flag up all the time. It should be our flag. How long until it's not just kids programming where they're showing communist symbolism? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they just decide now's the time to stop. Do you really think that's what's going to happen? I certainly don't. So maybe it's just some stupid woman on TV saying she's disturbed by the American flag. Or maybe it's getting worse. Until what happens, I don't know. But I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastIRL. We'll discuss these ideas live. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all then.